Hearty shalom to you, Jeffrey Seif here. Welcome to the Tree of Life Bible Society, to our site, and to Acts 23, where I, as a member of, a minister in the Bible Society, have an opportunity to share with you from the scriptures. I'm interested in Acts chapter 23, verses 6 through 11. Actually, I'm really interested in the end of it. At the beginning, I should say, and actually going to the beginning of the chapter, actually bleeding over into the previous, Paul got in trouble. He's ministering, there's tension, there's a flash of energy, angry people, things cascade out of control, the authorities come in, try and make sense of it all, and separate parties and conduct an inquiry. And that's kind of where we are here. I'd had opportunity to do that on a number of occasions in another vocation as a police officer. There's a dispute, you go in there, you want to quiet it down, conduct an investigation, find out what happened. It is what it is, and they did what they did. Paul is sequestered, and hey, what's going on here? He has an opportunity here to conversate with his detractors, and he smartly, after observing that some of the religious leaders were Pharisees and some Sadducees, he said, I'm here on account of the resurrection, knowing full well, certainly the gospel is the death, the burial, and the resurrection, but he knew full well that Sadducees didn't abide that notion and that the Pharisees did. So what started off as these negative energies directed toward him, they wind up turning their energies on each other. They're not going to get anywhere. They won't make any progress in making decisions about Paul. But as we'll see in a moment, when I land on the verse that I want to just unpack a little bit with you, this tension was not to be dissipated. There was divine design even in this less than hoped for circumstance. I mention that because the commander, seeing that he's not making any headway with it all, Paul is just, he's figuring out what to do, humanly speaking, but Paul is alone in verse 11, and he has a visitation. We're told in verse 11 that subsequent to these things, that is the following night, the Lord stood beside Paul and said, now it's an interesting expression, stood beside Paul. How big is God? 5'10", 6'3", 2 feet, certainly as a figure of speech, it's a kind of visitation. And it happened in the night. And sometimes, by the way, when people are pushed to the ragged edge, the emotions are high, circumstances are tense, the Lord shows up. And here the Lord stood beside Paul, according to the language of the text, and said, take courage. Interesting. Take courage. Chazak, be strong. Take courage. Seize courage. For just as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome. Flash. Now there's some meaning. There's some understanding. Why this tsuris? Why this aggravation? Well, this is the fire beneath the kettle. Granted, it's stirring up the waters, but there's a divine design in it all. That is that God is using this to get Paul to Rome. It's interesting, he just left the Mediterranean world. He was in Greece and went eastward to Jerusalem, now to be turned westward again to visit Rome, courtesy of the empire. He's going to be arrested. He's going to be waylaid for a season, a little bit left in Jerusalem. We'll see how he's moved to Caesarea Maritime. If you've been to Israel, you might remember that massive Roman ruin. A lot of tourists frequent it because you can get a snapshot of Rome away from Rome there in the Holy Land. Well, Paul will spend some time interred there. And then finally, he's going to get a voyage to Rome, courtesy of the empire. Well, here the Lord shows him, encourages him to take courage. Just as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify in Rome. This was the season, according to Acts, the gospel begins in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then goes out to the othermost parts of the world. That was that season. Now, I want to pivot from this and tell you we're in a new season right now. Not that we shouldn't always be propagating the gospel. The gospel began in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the end of the world. In other words, it started in Jerusalem and went to Rome. It started with the Jews, went to the broader culture. Now it's the season to start bringing it back. All of this is being transacted to help get the gospel out of Jewish culture into the broader Greco-Roman world. It's been there for 2,000 years. People like me and societies like we, the TLV, we're all about, not exclusively, but there's a principal interest in wanting to look at the good news through the eyes of the Jews. The way I say it, we want to help Jewish people come to know Jesus. We want to help Jesus people come to know Jews. We don't want to just testify in Rome, but we want to testify in Judea. To use that as poetic language, I still carry a vocation as a Bible college seminary professor. I have, a lot of opportunity to teach the word to individuals who are going to be going forth as pastors and missionaries in different venues in different parts of the world. I have over 300 students just this semester, and I get it. They're presenting the gospel in Rome. I want to present that in Jerusalem. And now as a Bible professor, I teach the good news through the eyes of the Jews. That's important to me. But personally as well, we live in a world today where God is raising up ministries and ministers to bring the gospel not to Rome principally, but to Jerusalem. There seems to be something of a turn of attention there. It happened, I think we live in pathetic times at one level. We live at prophetic times at another. With Israel's emergence as a nation among men, with Jerusalem, the capital city, going back into Jewish hands. This was like a big stone that got thrown in the pond and created all kinds of ripples. You have the Jesus movement in the 70s, right after the wars in the 60s. You have all kinds of revival flames that are fanned. And here we are as just part of those energies to return to Jerusalem. And let me just say thank you for your prayers and your cares in that regard. The gospel's gone to Rome. We're bringing it back. Thank you for helping us to do that. Let me encourage you to continue praying, caring, and sharing. God bless you. Jeffrey Seif here. Let's do this again next week. Ciao.